Maybe
I wouldn't
can-
expect many questions to be asked. They're not going to go, I don't think they'll go line by
maybe-
line.
Okay, maybe we can make a suggestion. We wouldn't be able to do that just in the interest of efficiency here. However, in an effort to allow the public to ask questions, what we can do is, if we know the budget hearings are coming up, what you can do is you can email me your questions ahead of time. We can present it to the administration and allow them an opportunity to answer
That
the
won't
questions.
work because
No.
the questions are forming while he's listening to the presentation.
Well, then-
Through you, Council President, every public meeting, regardless of whether it's a budget hearing, or a
Correct.
special council meeting, or a regular council meeting, there is a requirement under the statute to have a public hearing. Now, it's the council's process, and they run their own budget hearings. I would strongly urge the council not to open it up
Those
to
are,
each
yeah, those are not
individual. I
public-
agree with the council
Those are
president
not
on that.
public meetings. Those are work sessions.
All right.
But you're still required to have a public
Well,
session.
no, we're definitely required to have a public session, and
We
what we
do, but
normally
not-
do is we open it up at the end for anybody to ask
Correct.
questions instead of after each. We couldn't do it after each topic; it would take too long.
So he could have asked his question at the public session, which came after all.
At the end
After
of the
the
meeting.
after the budget presentations, there's at the end there's a portion for the public portion. So what we can do, Mr. Venezia, at that time, you can write down your questions and ask all the questions you need to ask at that
But,
time.
You know, the water department head was gone by that.
We'll ask him to wait next time. We'll ask him to. No, seriously, I'm not being funny. I'm being serious. Is if we have questions, as you said, not many people attend these meetings. So for those individuals who do come out to attend, the least we can do is have the department
It-
heads
you
wait
know,
until.
It doesn't matter a whole lot to me because I'm going to ask it, one way or the other. Either the worker gets it or you get it. So, whatever way you want to handle it, that's the way I'll do it.
But that's what we'll do is in the budget meetings, as long as the council and administration are okay with it, when we have the presentations at the end of the public portion, we'll have you guys ask your questions, but we will ask the department heads at that time to wait until all the questions have been asked and answered.
And through the council president, our department heads are all accessible. So if you walked up to them after they were done with their budget presentation and asked them a question, there is not one department head that I believe would not answer you with an honest assessment.
That's true, but sometimes I like it on the record, not on the side. Anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
Mary Przicki, 273 Marcella Road. Happy New Year to everybody. And I do have to agree with Michael. I am not computer illiterate. I really flunked the course. But Alpha Dog was one of the systems that if you were like me or somebody else who doesn't use a computer every day, it was easy, accessible to get to use. You just went and followed. If you wanted to find an ordinance, you hit that button, then they'd ask you which one it was, and they'd give you the choice. Today, when I wanted to find out what the meeting was going to be about, it's always asking, how can I help you? You type in, you want calendar dates for meetings. Do you get it? No, you get December, da-da-da-da-da. Then I wanted ordinances. That was totally impossible to find. So simplicity of what it was good for the average person who is not tech savvy. So do look into that system, because if you have something that works, stick with it. The other thing of it is I have to agree with Mr. Beals. Ages ago, I was on the Property Maintenance Committee when it was established by Frank Priori to investigate why the ordinances weren't being enforced. We looked at the ordinances. The ordinances on the books now are very, very good. There just wasn't enough inspectors to enforce them, and that was the problem. But I have to say, Mayor Fahey, wasn't a fan of his, but he did good things sometimes. And one of them was that he divided the township up so that every year They would go to Lake Hiawatha and they would inspect it. So that neighbor didn't have to rat on neighbor. They'd go to Lake Parsippany and then they'd go to another area. It worked out. And it kept the township cleaner, I think. So maybe you can consider that idea. I don't know. The other thing of it is I'm here tonight is because I do read the legals, okay? I don't know, not too many people do. But the special meeting dates that were supposed to be December 17th, I guess they were, and then December 30th. The December 17th meeting didn't get into the paper until the 17th of December.
Mm-hmm.
The 30th meeting didn't get into the paper until the 31st, the
Okay.
day after. Now, that's not adequate notice in my book. I don't know how that's screwed up, but somebody ought to look into how these things are getting in the paper. I
Miss-
mean, you're supposed to give adequate notice, but that
Right.
certainly wasn't adequate notice.
Right.
So, Ms. Przicki, I do understand what you're saying. What happens is sometimes in these circumstances, special meetings need to be called, quickly. And what the law states, and this is the New Jersey statute, states that in situations like that, what is required is the transmission of notice and not the publication of notice. So there's a difference here. So what happens is, what that means basically is, so if there's a meeting that is supposed to be held on December 17th, what the law requires is that notice is transmitted to the newspaper at least 48 hours in advance. So meaning, what that means is I would simply need to fax it or notify them, and that meets the requirements of the law. Now, what we try to do in situations like that for transparency as well is we try to put it up on the website, and we try to notify, and we try to post it all around the buildings. But the unfortunate thing is that is the law, is that only requires transmission and not publication. And that's why what happens is the newspapers themselves have schedules as to when they have to publish something. So, for example, if I'm going to transmit a notice on the 15th, sometimes their schedule doesn't allow them to publish it until the 18th or the 19th. And if it's a holiday schedule, then it's different as well. But I do understand what you're saying, and going forward, what we will try to do is, again, the law allows us simply to transmit notice, but what we do try is we try to put it on the website in a conspicuous location so that the public is notified.
That website, it's not conspicuous. I called the clerk and found out faster. Clerk's office, your office, about meeting dates.
I take that as a compliment. Thank
Than
you.
I do on the computer, okay? So something's got to change there. The other thing of it is would you please do something about, that looks like Tent City up there in Waterview with all of those signs, especially the big Whole Food signs hanging over the wall and everything else. Now, maybe there is a property maintenance code ordinance that says those are temporary signs and they need to be taken down. It's not attractive to Parsippany, that's for sure. And then I got one more question. I don't have
30 seconds.
30 seconds, oh my God. Okay. If an association receives money or benefits or services from a municipality, are they subject to Oprah laws?
It's a complicated question. There are some cases that hold that those associations, those private associations that do receive municipal funding are subject to Oprah. It depends on the nature and extent of the funding and their interaction with municipal government. So it would be difficult to answer that without more information.
Okay. Thank you.
She'll go back again with another question, because she just got her answer.
Nicholas Homiak, Lake Hiawatha. The website, I was actually accused of being the only person who couldn't operate it. But when Casey Pariki, a man that worked for Nassau, couldn't operate it, I think that says everything. But if you can't get Alpha Dog back, anything that replicates Alpha Dog, because that website was simple. A monkey in a space capsule could have worked that and found out anything he needed to find out. So how it ever got this way for this long, I don't know. I understand there's going to be a change with Kemper up at the Knoll. Now, I hope that doesn't interfere with the meeting that me, Kendalski, and Dombrowski had up there. They agreed to extend the town plastic ban to the facilities and everything at the Knoll. So hopefully that won't be forgotten. The, what do you call it, the caterer and everything, supposedly is agreeing to, he wants to get rid of the styrofoam and all, so I hope that that is encouraged. There's a situation now coming up with St. Christopher's Church, and I can't believe that the church is, wants to sell it to the highest bidder. But I would encourage everyone now, and I hope this is the right time, to read Pope Francis's encyclical, if I'm saying it right. I hope I'm saying it right. It's about establishing our links again with our home and our environment. It's a beautiful thing. It's 184 pages, and any human being of any religion or any sect or agnostic or anything, it's just, it's so positive that it's very hard to disagree with any of it. But hopefully when a decision has to be made, in the back of your mind, the answer will be no. And I would have a question, when did that property exactly come up for sale, or when it was known that the church wanted to get rid of it, and why didn't Parsippany condemn the property? They have the right to do that. There's a famous case here, you're probably familiar with it, from Wayne, New Jersey, with the Albanian Association, the Township of Wayne, and they wanted to make a mosque. This went back in 2007. The town won out, and they got the open space where the mosque was supposed to be, because a town has every right to do that. And as long as you don't, there's not a fraud or some dishonesty or misconduct, the municipality has every right to condemn property. So hopefully we're not going to change the character of another Parsippany neighborhood. And Nick Napolitano, he put some beautiful pictures of that area over there, and without those trees and everything, there goes the neighborhood. And for something else that Parsippany really doesn't need. And even if you did need it, it's just not the right place to put it. But I'd like to know when that property became available, why Parsippany didn't condemn it, and why they still can't condemn it, and the church would get their fair market value. So, and one last thing, you know, when you walk around the streets and you look at these storm drains, and sometimes they have a plate over it which narrows the opening. So, you know, there's all the plastic and everything in the street. It prevents some of it from getting into the storm drain.
30 seconds.
But a lot of the storm drains don't have those plates. And in some of the areas, like down by the Rockaway River, or in commercial districts where there is a lot of litter, the town should consider installing those plates, along with enforcing the ordinances that they should keep their immediate areas clean. But I would, if you could look into that, or if that's possible. And Happy New Year, we hope.
Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Nick, in response to the property behind St. Christopher's, the diocese has been talking about the possibility of selling that property for several years, as a matter of fact. Years ago, the Open Space Committee did look at it and did not find a use that the township could utilize that property. And in fact, the diocese approached the school board. The school board looked at it, and they didn't feel it was in their best interest either to purchase it. Now, we do have a new mayor and new administration. If if he wants to have the Open Space Committee look at it again, that's his prerogative. But we had no use for it in the prior Open Space Committee.
Right now, I believe, and Jim, correct me if I'm wrong on this site, they're already in a sale for it right now. I don't think legally we can get involved in
It may
that
be
until
too late already.
Until it fails, yes. If it fails, then we can do something about it. But the other thing is that this is not part of the COA plan at all, so they don't have a lot of leverage to do what they want to do.
No.
My understanding is that there's a contract for sale between
Yeah.
the church and a developer, and there's already a zoning board application that's pending at the zoning board.
15th is the meeting. Would you like to look over the case from Wayne?
No, if we wanted to now take that property using eminent domain, which is what you were alluding to,
Oh, condemn it.
we would have to pay whatever the estimated value of the property would be now, developed per the way this contractor is going to develop it. In other words, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, we could have got it for open space. But now, its value as developable property as townhouses or apartments is far, far higher. Kind of the same thing with when we had Whole Foods, the Whole Foods issue. There was a deposit, a contract to purchase by that developer, and we could not break that. Eminent domain would have cost us between $20 and $30 million to take back the Whole Foods property.
And before you even get to the valuation issues, you have to have a public purpose. You have to have some public purpose by which the property would be used by the municipality.
Right.
Well, I mean, the courts have said that those open space decisions need to be predicated on an adopted open space plan. And I think, as the council president indicates, I don't think there's a plan that calls for the acquisition of that property.
Correct.
Excuse me, Council President, isn't this something for the zoning board right now?
This actually well, the application will probably go before the planning board.
It's-
Board of Adjustment?
Yes,
Board of
Board of
Adjustment.
Adjustment.
Oh, is it?
application.
Okay.
On the 15th.
So they're going for variances then. All right.
Wouldn't it be up to the church if they wanted to give us?
We really cannot have this back and forth from the audience. I apologize, guys, although it seems like very good discussion, but we
No,
really
we're-
cannot have the back and forth.
No, we're done with that. Anyone else want to come up and speak during the open session? Seeing no one come forward, I'll
Make a
entertain
motion.
motion.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Carriffy, seconded by Ms. McCarthy. Roll call, Mr. DePiero. Oh, no, Mr. Carriffy,
Yes.
Ms. Grignani,
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
Floor is closed.
Okay, entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Carriffy, seconded by Ms. Grignani. Roll call, Mr. Carriffy,
Yes.
Ms. Grignani,
Yes.
Ms. McCarthy,
Yes.
Ms. Peterson,
Yes.
Mr. DePiero.
Yes.
We are adjourned. Take a couple minutes, and then we'll be starting
We'll
our.
take a 5-minute recess, and then we'll come back for the agenda meeting,
Thank you, Council President.
which should be pretty quick.